There he goes.
All right. Well, I probably get in trouble with that. Okay. I want to mention something very quickly. Well, let's go ahead and do the words of the day and see what we have for them. You know what is astounding to me is as we look at when you look at the words that are used, it really what's wrong looking for? It really colors how you understand things. And we're going to see that today. For example, this word right here, gune, when gune means a married woman, as opposed to a parthenos. Parthenos is a virgin, an unmarried woman. In English, we used to say Miss and Mrs. We don't get to say Miss and Mrs. anymore. We say Ms., or whatever. But a gune immediately tells you, for example, in German, a Frau or a Fräulein, right? In Greek, we have other words that are even more declarative and very specific words. Just like in Greek, we have words that declare how people speak or how they're speaking or what they're saying. We have words that talk about how you're loving or, what the different types of love. There are very specific words about an infant, a child, and when we say child, what's a child? A person that's younger than 12, a person that's older than, out of puberty, a person that's a marriageable age. And this is true in Hebrew, but it's really true in Greek. So in Greek, we have this word Thugatron, Thugatarion, because in Greek you don't pronounce TR like we do in English. And Thugatr. Now, you might be able to guess what this word means, and when I tell you what it means, you're going to say, aha, because this is a word in Greek for daughter. So daughter, D-A-U, daughter, in English. Now, Thugatarion means a little daughter, a small daughter, a daughterling, a daughterling. So what's a daughterling? A daughter could be, of any age, right? But what's a daughterling in your mind? Yeah, probably below marriageable age, right? Because if you're above marriageable age, then you'd be a gune. But anyway, if I were to use the word daughterling, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this will come into play even more when we finally get to some other parts in Mark. This word, I-A-T-R-O-N, I-A-Tarion, I-A-Taron, I think that's correct, I-A-O-M-A-I, I-O-M-A-I. Now, let's see if I remember which one's which. The iatron, means a physician. This is a Greek word for physician. Has it been used before? No, not one time. This is a word for what we would call physician. Now, what is a physician in a Greek sense? What's a physician like 200 years ago?
Gosh, barbers used to be physicians a long time ago.
A barber. Barbers, I guess barbers kind of went, it's kind of like with the buggy whip thing. When you stop making buggy whips, you start making something else, right? So barbers started as what? Yeah, bloodletting, right? They let blood. There's another thing that barbers did that was very important, that they lost their job to somebody else. Do you have any idea what it was?
Dentistry.
Yeah, dental work. What did they do for dental work? What was the main way they treated dentistry back?
Pulled teeth.
Actually, no. They didn't pull teeth. What they did, they found that pulling the teeth is really bad because it causes even worse infection. So what they would do is the tools were not to pull teeth. That's dentistry, and that's not modern dentistry. what they would do is they would break the caps off. You'd pull the teeth that were small, but for a molar, which were mostly the common, those are the teeth that got abscessed. What they would do is they build abscess, and what would happen? They'd have infection in them, right? And the only way to relieve the pain and the infection was what? It wasn't by pulling them. It was by opening them up. That's right. You would open up, and so all the tools of old dentistry in the days of the barbers was to break the top of the tooth open or off. Right? And then it would drain, and hopefully you would survive the bacterial infection that was already there, right? So, you know, this is great stuff, right? That's what this guy did. Okay? And you notice it hasn't been used at all. The idea of what causes illness? The gods, demonic possession, right? We are going to move into a different sphere of ideas. What did these guys, what did physicians in the ancient world do? What did they cure?
Battle wounds,
Things like
military wounds.
surgery, what you could see or hear.
Yeah, battle wounds, what you could see, the things like, for example, if I had a cut, right? Now that might have been fate, it might have been my fate, right? But the surgeon could sew it up, right?
Or chop it off.
Or chop it off. Yeah, you know, take your pick, or, you know, sew it up, right? That's what the surgeons did. Because, you know, they wouldn't touch the stuff that was what?
Internal illness.
Well, or demonic possession, right? If it's demonic possession, right, you're going to die.
Take it to the priest.
Take it to a slepion, right? Because, you know, that's what the physician would do. A parent would call in a physician to treat a child, and if the child had, like, a wound, I could sew it up or bandage it, right? But if the child had a fever, I can't do anything for you. The child is cursed by Zeus. So what do you need to do? Go to the temple of Zeus, give a swine, right, to the god, and maybe that'll work. And if it didn't work, you took the kid to the Asclepion and left him there. I'm not kidding. And, you know, we talk about child abandonment, you know, in the ancient world. It was very common. But it was more common for, it wasn't just, you know, we in the abortion age, when we kill babies, right, just because we don't like babies anymore, we just want to get rid of them. In the ancient world, they didn't just kill babies because they didn't want children. Why did they allow a lot of this?
Because a lot of them were maybe disfigured or had some sort of birth defect, and so they were cursed or whatever, so they would abandon those.
Exactly. And this is what I talk about in my book. If you look at the second mission, you know, one of the slaves of, this is out of fiction, but one of the slaves of Socrates, the slave of Socrates, is a woman who has a birthmark. And so she's cursed. And she spent all of her money, you know, to go to the Asclepion to be taken from this curse that she has, right? And so the view of the world is that when a child has a fever, a child is sick, that they are cursed. So a lot of the child abandonment is not necessarily abandonment in the sense that we have, because, you know, you didn't, although it is true, societies tended to abandon children more often as they became more prosperous, which is really perverse, right? You'd think that the opposite was true. When there's when you're in survival, that you would, you know, hold on to the children, you know, or you would get rid of the children more quickly, but that's not true. It's very wild that the more prosperous we become, the less important life becomes to us. So that's just historically true. But anyway, we're going to find this because a physician would heal that. So when you see these words in Greek, you know that they're treating something they believe is a wound, as opposed to, or something that is not considered a curse. This is very interesting and important. And then, of course, I put in this, and I want to talk really quickly about this mysterion. One of the things that's the most dangerous thing that could happen to a, let's say, religion. I don't believe Christianity is a religion. Christianity is just that's why when you look at, you know, in terms of religious, you know, religions, I've given you guys quotes from religious documents and things like that. And if you look at ancient religious documents, I mean, they're just, all of them are really weird, you know, except for when you start looking at the books of the New Testament, Old Testament, which are supposed to be historical, right? And that's what we look at them as historical documents. But, you know, if you look at the Manos or the Bhagavad Gitas, anyone who's read those things, or the Book of the Dead, you know, they're just whacked. They're really weird. And it's because the people are writing not history. What do they think they're writing?
Prayers to their dead, or their gods and mystical things.
Yeah, but mystical things. How do this is one of the Socratic great arguments of Socrates. If I'm a man, how do I know anything about the gods? I don't. You know, all I can do is put in history, right? Socrates wrote about his friend going to the oracle. And the oracle, it wasn't, I don't think, maybe it was a Delphitic oracle. Anyway, he went to the oracle, and the oracle told him that Socrates was the smartest and wisest man in the world, right? And then they killed him for it. So, you know, not a positive thing. But the big deal here is that Socrates related historically what happened, right? But Socrates railed all over and over again about human beings trying to understand the gods, right? How do you know what the gods are? All you can do in human history is relate what?
To what we know. Philosophy.
No, not philosophy.
What that which we know.
What happens? Yeah, what you know, right? Right? If I have historical work that says that Jesus did this or Jesus did that, or some certain person did this, some certain person did that, then I have historical basis for making a decision, right? But if I have some work that just comes out of somebody's mind, right? Well, what does that tell me?
Good dream.
Well, the person might be unbalanced. They might be totally balanced. I don't know. But if they're talking about, like, some of this stuff is really weird stuff, that you see in historical documents. That's why, the New Testament, this is a problem. And what I wanted to mention is this, okay? So remember the way religions evolve in history. They start with animism, and they go to pantheonic paganism, and they go to Mysterion, and then they go to Gnosticism. What is the most dangerous thing that could happen to any religion, especially historically based religion?
Prove it wrong.
Most prophets.
Become
Remember Paul and I think Jesus to a large extent, but Paul especially, but Jesus to a huge extent, made their views look like a mysterion, or their views look like a mysterion, right? What happens if they become a mysterion?
They're no better than anything
Becomes
else.
sacred
that's out
and
there.
disappear.
Will follow the line
Bingo. And what do we see in modern Christianity?
and Gnosticism.
We see modern Christianity, we see a lot of modern Christianity in Mysterion, because if they have secret initiation rites or secret rites, a lot of Christians call that cults, and that's true. But if they move to Gnosticism, in Gnosticism, what matters?
science.
Knowledge. Very interesting. So that, I have a lot of friends, or I know a lot of people that are enamored with theology, enamored with doctrine, enamored with ideas that are not historical. I mean, some of them have historical antecedents, but they're just, where did you get that idea? Well, I found it in a commentary someplace, right? And I'm just saying that the most dangerous thing that can happen is if you start viewing yourself, like, for example, Christianity I don't believe is a religion. Christianity is just based in facts, right? In what we know about the world. But if you start to view yourself as something that is a mysterium, I'm a chosen people. Do you really want to be a chosen people? What do you want to be? You want to be people that were persuaded. That's nice. Or who chose. Remember what did what's his name say? Joshua say?
Choose this day whom you will serve.
All were chosen, but few chose. I'm just saying, okay? In a Mysterion, you could be chosen, the chosen ones, the chosen few, the frozen chosen, the chosen in the pews.
844,000.
Right?
Lionel, could you share with us what you believe the definition of a religion is if Christianity is not a religion?
A religion is something that is based in a human idea about what they think God is, or a God is, gods or gods. So, for example, in animism, I believe, quite incorrectly, we know today that there are spirits in everything. In pantheonic paganism, I believe that the spirits of gods, give inspiration to humans. That's why there's music and art and literature. In Mysterion, I believe that the mystic things of the world can't be fully explained, but they can be shown. So I have a mystic view, and I have secret initiation ceremonies to train people in those secret rites. In Gnosticism, I believe that knowledge is the end of all things, and therefore if I have enough knowledge, I find God. All these are human-based. On the other hand, a non-religion or a revealed concept like Christianity, well, Jesus comes into the world, and he says, I'm God, and he proves it, and we have 4 beautiful declarations in the Logos to Telos, separate ones. We have 26 total documents in the ones we mostly use that show that. And then we have a thing that says this guy died, supposedly sacrificially, on purpose, and that he rose again. And we have witnesses to that. So a religion would be a group that says, not that we base our ideas on these facts, but rather that we base our ideas on what?
Emotions.
What we think. Well, emotions, thoughts, what we think, right? Jesus and Paul asked you to look at the world in terms of what?
What God has revealed to us. Because we can't know Him without.
Yeah, I think, and that's what embodies it. Yeah, what we have seen in history. That's what they keep appealing to is historical. And that's what I appeal to. I say, look at the world. That's what we're looking at in Mark. We're not looking at Mark from a theological doctrinal standpoint. I don't really care. What we're looking at Mark in is, what do the words say? And we say, what do the words say? Boy, wow, there's a little bit different than what we think, right? And especially when we start looking at the world in terms of what the Greeks thought and what the Hebrews thought about the world. That's what we're going to do right now. So let's look at, we're in chapter 5:21. Chapter 5:21, it says, when Jesus again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Listen to me. This statement is very, very, very important. Think about this. Okay, I'm a Greek thinker. Remember when Jesus went across the lake before? What happened? But why do storms happen in the Greek world? Because the gods. And the reason that Mark told us specifically was that the gods, Zeus and Poseidon, were attacking Jesus. And that Jesus told them to shut up. And they did. So what is important about this little statement? When Jesus again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake.
There's no attack.
Yeah,
He
has
tempted the gods
mastery
again.
over it. He can come and go as he pleases.
Bingo! Now, in English, we just go, well, he crossed over the lake. Because, right? It wasn't
Go to the other side.
Why did the chicken cross the road?
the frontal activity had not come across. Because we are Greek thinkers, but we're scientists, right? We have an empirical worldview, right? We're scientists. In fact, the empiricist one, which is really sad over the logisticians, but that's another problem in modern thought. But because we think the way we do, we know that it wasn't a front line, right? That's what we believe. But in their view, it was because of why? Because Jesus had done what?
Defeated the other gods.
He already defeated them, so he didn't have to do it again, right? And he can go across the lake anytime he wants, right? And whenever there's an issue in the lake, all Jesus has to do is say, shut up, right? And it will. So I think this is really important. Now, remember the large crowd? So obviously they, whatever, they had some premonition. Now, there's another really important thing that we noted last week I don't want you to miss. You notice what Mark did. Mark took Jesus into the land of the Greeks, right? The Decapolis. And so what did Mark prove? That Jesus has
Authority everywhere.
authority. You know, you could maybe limit it, but he's saying he has authority where the Greek gods are, right? So just Jehovah God has authority where the Greek gods are. And this is an important question that they have. So now there's other questions that still have to be answered. So let's see the questions. Remember, the last thing that he did, he says he has power over the Roman legions. He has power over, you know, before we saw he had power over, you know, the curses of the gods. He had power over the fates, you know, the things that gods have done to the people, harm them, you know, demons, all this stuff. There are other things that Mark needs to show us that Jesus has power over. So let's see what else he has power over. It says in 22, then one of the synagogue rulers, literally an archisynagogus, a director of the synagogue, the high guy in the synagogue, named Jairus, came there. Seeing Jesus, he fell. He literally, pepito, he fell at his feet. And I'm really sad that we don't really refer this because, you know, falling at the feet and kissing, remember last time the guy with the demonic or whatever, the legions thing, he went and he kissed Jesus' feet. You know, that's what this guy's doing. He's kissing his feet, you know, and he's got like, stuff on his feet, yeah?
Only dogs can do
Now, Jairus has got to be what? If he's the director of the synagogue, what groups is he part of?
Levi?
What's that?
Is he a Levi?
No, not Levi, probably. He's probably a Pharisee, and he's obviously a rabbi, right? Got to be a rabbi and a Pharisee. So he's very educated, very well educated, right? So, in Matthew, do you remember where this account was in Matthew? What did it follow? In Matthew, this followed the account of the bridegroom. And remember what we saw? We saw the Logos to telos in Matthew was all about the bridegroom. Notice this does not follow the bridegroom. This follows the account of authority. Of what kind of authority? So what kind of authority do you think is going to be put into question here? Let's just see. There is also in Matthew a huge question in this about cleanliness. We're going to see this too, but we'll look see what it has. I want you to note something that remember when the man who was threatened by the demons, he came to Jesus and he bowed at his feet and he kissed his feet. And basically, what would be the Hebraic view of this man? And also, what would be the Gentile view of this guy?
He's worshiping.
Of this guy, of the guy. Before, does he have worth?
Yeah.
No, he has no worth. He has zero worth because he is faded and he's cursed, right? So, in Hebrew worldview, this guy doesn't even have anything. Because Hebrew worldview, the guys, we know he was a Gentile now because remember, he went back to his family. And so he was probably a deserter from the Roman legion, all this stuff we went through. But he has no worth in a Hebrew concept. Because he's not Hebrew. Number one, he's not a Jew. And number two, there's no question of cleanliness or uncleanliness, right? Because all the Gentiles are unclean. But look what happens here. This is very interesting. Because remember, these are logos to telos. And have we broken out of this main logos to telos? The main logos to telos was the parable said who Jesus was. He claimed to be God. He claimed to have godlike powers. He proved his powers over Zeus and over Poseidon. He proved his powers over the Roman legion. He proved his power that this God, Jehovah, had power in, over the Greek gods and in the Greek regions. This is a continuation of that. So let's put on our thinking caps and see what happens.
Complete submission.
So look what happens here in 23. He pleaded. He parakleo. Now remember, parakleo can be looked at as a term of endearment or a term of derision. I told you before that when they parakleo, they were probably looking down on Jesus. Maybe. Remember the Gerasene guy also was parakleoing Jesus? This guy's parakleoing Jesus. He's pleading with him earnestly, kissing his feet. My Thurgaterion, my daughterling, my little daughter, is dying. She's eshantos. She's in the extremity of life. Please come and put your hands on her so she will be suzo, saved, and zeo. Look very closely at this. Did he say that she's sick? Did he say she's ill? Does she have a fever? Is she possessed? You know why he's saying this?
She probably has some injury or something.
Or maybe the writer and Jarvis do not want to say, right? I think you're right. I think maybe it's like the paralyzed guy, that it was an injury or something, something that could be, But the fact that he says little daughter, daughterling. Now, how much worth does a daughterling have in Hebrew society?
No, not too much.
Almost zero. How much does she have in a Greek culture? In the culture itself, she has very low, but to the parents,
No, very high.
it's pretty high. Now, in a Hebrew society, where do you think it stands with the parents? I'd say it's much lower than the Greeks, because Greeks had a great, Greeks and children Greeks really view children very high, because they call them timeon. They call them a bankable resource, literally a resource of value. A child was viewed. What do the Hebrews call their children? Nothing like that. In the Hebraic worldview, children are kind of, they're there, right?
That's why the disciples were sending the children, the parents away who had the children.
Bingo. Children do not really have huge value in Hebraic society. They had great value to the parents. The Greeks had a very high value of children. So it's interesting, and to compare these are interesting.
Lionel, can you stop there just a minute?
Yeah.
If they have value to the parents, does that mean that the disciples, because they were not parents, did not have this understanding?
No,
or
because-
did it not transcend families?
Because of Hebrew.
But you said that the Hebrews, their children had value to the parents.
To a lower degree than the Greeks. I'm just saying that in Hebrew culture, for every, there's no word for love in Hebrew. There's lots of words for love in Greek. And love is really applied to Greek children. Greek children are well protected. Look what happens in the Hebrew children. Throughout everything we've looked at, Hebrew children are not treated that nicely. I wouldn't necessarily want to be an ancient Hebrew child, because their view of children is just not high worth. Even today, the rabbis argue that a child can be, child doesn't have any value until they're 30 days old in Orthodox Judaism, and definitely until their a boy is circumcised, has no value at all in their worldview. So we are a modern product of modern views. Yeah.
The only thing is, though, a Hebrew woman was destitute, but just felt worthless herself if she was barren. So bearing children was of good value to Jewish people.
Bearing children, live children, and was very important. Very important. Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. As a culture, like even the culture of the Greeks, did not necessarily, the culture did not view children super highly. That is, they might adopt a child if the child was, of value, right? And a similar thing you see in the Hebrew culture. right? But in the Greek culture, the children are called value. But in Hebrew culture, the children are not called of value. The Greek culture relates them to money that's been saved up. So I'm not saying, we know that any woman, even in a Greek culture or a Hebraic culture, whose child was cursed, right? Can you imagine the consternation of trying to put that child in a shlepian? I mean, it's horrific, right? But it's your culture. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I think we need to get our cultural blinders off and see how these people think about the world. But in this, what do you think the crowd is thinking about this Jairus guy that says, please, on his feet, kissing Jesus' feet, kissing this prophet's dirty feet. My little daughter, my Thergeon, is dying. She's in the extremity of life. Come put your hands on him so she'll be healed. What's everybody thinking around him?
Why wasting your time?
Why are you wasting your time on a little girl? You could have another. You have more children, right? Why waste your time? Take a couple other wives. Have a bunch of kids, right? It's not a big deal. It might be of value to the mama, because the mama puts a lot of effort, and in those days, very common to die in childbirth, right? So it's huge effort in terms of the mama, and of course the dad is paying for it, right? He's paying the food to make sure people are surviving. But I'm just saying, this is their worldview. Notice that he very carefully picks his words. It's a euphemism. She's in the extremity of life. She's not cursed. She's not ill. She's not fevered. She's not, right? Because the question here is what?
Is she unclean?
Is she unclean?
Would the prophet dirty himself by touching her? Because he's asking to lay his hands on her.
And also the question is, what is of value to God? To all these people around him, this little girl has no value. She has value to Jairus and to probably his wife, right? To the family. She doesn't value these people. Their mind is, why would he do this? Anyway, let's see what he says. So Jesus went with him, and the crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman, a gune, a wife, was there who had been subject to a ruus, a flux of bleeding, of blood, for 12 years. Now notice what it doesn't say. Is she sick? Nope. Is she cursed? Nope. She is unclean. Now, what do you think the Greek worldview of this is? She's unclean to the Hebrews.
Can't produce children.
She can't produce children. Remember this, we talked about this before in the Matthew, but remember this doesn't follow the bridegroom. The problem with, now you notice that he calls her a wife, but doesn't give us all the history that Matthew gives us about this woman. But you notice the big deal about this. She can't have sexual intercourse. Therefore, she can't act as a wife. That is in Hebrew thought.
Can't produce an heir.
She can't produce children. Now, in Greek thought, they don't have an idea of cleanliness. The Greeks, you say, well, they're unclean. No, the Greeks kept more clean than anybody in the world. How do you think the Greeks would view this woman? What is the Greek view? She doesn't have value because she can't bear children. She's not cursed. If anything, this is a mystery. Right? It's a mystery.
And the decisions, they can't figure it out.
Well, the reason it's a mystery is because what do we know about pagan cultures? What's the big deal with pagan cultures? Why do pagan cultures, a lot of them, have female priests and priestesses and witches, etc., etc.? What's the big deal with pagan cultures? And animistic cultures, too. What can you tell if you're a woman?
You can grant life.
Well, granting life is not so much. What's the big deal with women in time? Time is a huge thing with animism and paganism. Because guess what what do animists and pagans always look for?
The cycle of the moon.
The cycle of the moon. And what can women know? The cycle of time. And the time cycle is a huge thing in cultures. So a woman who has a flow of blood in a paganistic culture is what?
Out of sync
she is out of time, not out of time, but it's a mystic thing. Now to the Hebrew it's unclean, right? But to the Hebrew culture, and by the way, why do you think God made this thing about cleanliness and the menstrual cycle? Just guess. Just make a guess based on paganism and animism. If I make it unclean, what did I just remove it from? I removed the idea of women being specifically spiritual because of the menstrual cycle. And the thing is that what that does is it separates you from animism and paganism. Because in animism and paganism, you are looking at time and you're trying to tell time. How do you tell time in the ancient world?
Sun and moon.
You have a sundial on your
Yeah,
watch,
it's
right?
true sundial,
Light a
right?
match and read the sundial.
The light and the moon but women can know a natural cycle of the world and show a natural cycle of the world. Men don't, right? So that is one of the reasons that women become priestesses in general animistic and paganistic cultures. And the way to cut that off is if you make a rule that says that the menstrual cycle is unclean, because there are a lot of ancient pagan cultures that specifically want to have sex with women, especially priestesses and stuff like that, during their menstrual cycle, because it's viewed as a holy thing. The Greeks did this. The Greeks saw this as a positive. So anyway, it's just interesting to note this. This question, though, you notice what it says. Look what it says in 26. She suffered a great deal under the care of many iatroi. So they're treating it as what? This is Greek. This isn't Hebrew. So they're treating it as a wound. She's not cursed. She's not fated. As a matter of fact, if anything, she's blessed to a degree, right? But as a Hebrew, this is not a positive thing. And spent all she had. And instead of getting better, she grew worse. Which, like we already talked about the doctors in that era. So, just by the imagination of what they did as their ideas, I don't even talk about the ways they might have tried to cure this because they're not very pretty. But, you can imagine it. Doctors whose only tools are, oil and burning and, irons that are burning hot to, cauterize. They believe that cauterization was a way to stop wounds, right? Or sutures, when they could. We're talking about, so they grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his himation. Now this is really important. Remember, what did she touch in Matthew?
The hem.
She touched the tistot. She touched the tassels on his. In Matthew, Jesus is clothed like a Hebrew Pharisee, but in Mark, he's clothed like a Greek. Because the himation was the outer cloak, the chion or the peneplon was the inner cloak. So this is real Greek. The pelepos. The pelepos is the inner robe, the himation is the outer robe. So she touches his himation. This is pure Greek. So, really, you should just throw out your Hebrew. The Hebrew ideas. Because even though it's the Hebrew women, Mark is writing to Greeks. And so the Greeks are thinking this. And they're thinking, yeah, we feel for the woman, but, really this woman has kind of they have to be explained why this is not good in a certain way, right? They know she can't reproduce probably, or, well, maybe they don't know she can't reproduce. Right?
I don't think they understood.
Yeah,
If they thought that it was good to have sex during the menstrual flow, then they wouldn't have understood the Hebrew thing.
they would have to have it explained to them. And when it's explained to them, how much worth does she have? She has almost zero worth, right? But look what happens. In 28, because she legoed, if I just touch his himation, his clothes, and not, notice, it's not the tistot, it's not the fringe of the prayer shawl. If I touch his outer robe, I will be suzo, I'll be safe. I'll be suzo. Not healed, not uncursed. I'll be suzo. I'll be safe. What does she want to be safe from? Probably ridicule, probably
Barrenness,
barrenness, you know,
all the things that she suffered from the physicians.
the lack of worth, the things she suffered because of this illness. Well, remember, it's not an illness, right? This is a natural phenomenon, you know?
Lack of ridicule.
She, in 29, immediately, her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body. Look what it says. She felt in her soma, her sart, suke, and pneuma, that she was freed. The word is enomai. She was cured. It wasn't a curse, it was a wound. The wound healed in her body. The wound healed. Was from her mastics. And mastics, remember that was a word that we had before? Mastics. Mastics comes the closest to being a curse, because mastics is the whip. So this whip was an evident whip. Why was it an evident whip? She couldn't walk anywhere without showing it, right? She couldn't hide it. She could barely hide it. Because what happens, once Jesus in 30 realized that dunamis force had gone out of him, he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my hemation, my outer robe? Jesus is Greek too. Ha! And 31, you see people crowding against you, his disciples asked, and yet you can ask, who touched me? Now, you know, there's something really important about this. Because what is the proof text of this? This is a proof text, right? You know, if you had people all around you, how is the only way that you know that you were touched and power went out of you?
Supernaturally.
Because of spiritual or supernatural reasons. So, you know, that's the only reason that Jesus could know this. This is like one of those logical setups.
Lionel, stop before you go any further.
Yeah.
In verse 28,
Uh-huh.
in English it says, for she said. What does it say in Greek?
Logos.
Meaning,
She logically argued in her mind.
in her mind.
In
She
her mind.
didn't say it.
No.
But Steve, as we go on, she then tells everything that happened. She confessed.
It says that she logoed. She legoed. So she thought, she made a logical argument in her mind that if I just touch his outer robe, I will be safe.
And she
So did
moved
she
on.
say it out loud?
There's no indication that she said a lot, but
But she explained it later.
yeah, she made some later, but it's a mental thing. Yeah, so we know what she was thinking because it tells us later. But, you know, Mark's giving us nothing that an ancient writer puts in there is not important. So the point that she's telling you is that she logically thought this. And, you know, to the Greek reader, this isn't illness, it's not a curse, it's not, you know, it may be the fate of the gods, right? But it's not necessarily a negative in the Greek view. In the Hebrew view, it's really a negative. And that's why it's probably explained when this is read to the Greeks. But in any case, you know,
She also would have had to articulate it to somebody else, because we can't know what's in her mind
well,
otherwise.
she will. Watch what happens. So,
Hey, the disciples obviously still don't get
no, they don't, but let's get there.
it. Right?
They're not getting it, right? They're not getting it.
They're like,
We
hey,
should
you
feel
asked
for
us
these
to touch
disciples.
me.
But they're not Greek, they're Hebrew, okay? And the Greeks are looking at him going, you know, they don't get it, right? But Jesus, we get it. Don't we get it? We kind of get it, right? Because we're Greek-minded. Just think if we're Hebrew-minded, we just wouldn't get this. But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Look what it says. And this didn't happen in Matthew. In Mark, he keeps looking around, right? So he's looking, you know, can you see this? He's pushing people aside. He's looking to the crowd. Who touched me? Who touched me? Right? Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet. Again, kissed his feet. Damn. And trembling with fear. Why is she trembling with fear?
She's not
Really
sure
what the
who's
God-
She
talking
took
about
something
this.
without
Those are
permission.
nasty.
No, she's about to die. She's about to die. Because she was unclean and she went into this crowd of people, and everyone who touched her, everyone's been next to her, is unclean. So no one can have teruma because she was unclean. So she's going to die. They're going to kill her. She was trembling, and told him, past tense, told him the whole truth, aletheia, told him the aletheia. And he said, he echoed to her, Thurgater, daughter, Thurgater, daughter. And you notice what he just did. Remember the paraplegic? And he said to her, him, her, we don't know, said to them, child of God, right? And now he just told her, daughter. And you remember what Jesus said before? Those who follow my will are my brothers and sisters and mother. This is a continuation of this idea. Who has worth? Who is worthwhile in the kingdom? Jesus told you who has worth. His brothers and sisters and mother, right? We learn more. So he echoed to her, Thurgater, your pistis, your persuasion, not your faith, your persuasion has suzo, not healed, has saved you, has suzo you. Go in peace. Go in arena. We immediately know that this woman is
Hebrew.
Jewish. She's Hebrew. With arena, not charis, with arena. And be freed, literally, hugis, healthy from your mastics. Healthy from your mastics. Amazing. Notice that Jairus wanted help for his little daughter, his Thagarion, and yet Jesus just said, a gune is a daughter. She has value. Value to him. And guess what? Her persuasion, her logos, made her safe, made her whole. Very different than Matthew. Very different. Go back and review the notes from Matthew. But this is an incredible answer. Now, while Jesus was speaking in 35, while he was layloing, so he was speaking to them, right? Not logosing, he's speaking to them. So meaning, he's not just giving a logical argument. Some man came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. Your daughter is dead. Literally, apognesko. She's died off. She's gone to the dead. They legoed. Why bother? Why harass? Why skula? Why harass the didaskalos anymore? Didaskalos. You notice they're using, this is all Greek terms. These are, didn't say rabbi, right? Don't bother rabbi. Literally, this is total Greek. They're acknowledging him as a Greek teacher, a Greek leader. Don't bother him, whatever. 36. Parakuno. He intentionally misheard. Why did he intentionally mishear? Well, we'll see. I hate this ignoring. It wasn't ignoring. In the Greek it says it's parakuo. Parakuo means that he misheard intentionally. Beautiful word. What they argue.
Can I use that word with you?
You see, I use it all the time. That's one of the males have this great strength that they parakuo all the time, right? They intentionally mishear. Jesus legoed the synagogue leader. Phobeo. Don't be afraid. Just pisteo. Be persuaded. Be persuaded. Look, this woman was persuaded that if she touched Jesus' outer robe, she would be suzo. Not healed, not taken from the curse, not, cured of the demonic possession, but saved. Saved from whatever it was, right? Do you think she imagined that she'd be saved, that it would stop the flow of blood? No. She probably had no idea that was what would happen. She'd sure like it, right? But that wasn't the point. The point was her value. That the fact that just by touching the robe of Jesus, that the power would be enough to save her. Not heal her, not take away the curse, but save her. Now, let's go on. It's really beautiful stuff here. Be persuaded. And what is the persuasion that we're supposed to be persuaded of? No. The kingdom of heaven is near. Remember, what did Jesus preach? Repent. Metaneo. Metaneo. Because the kingdom of heaven is near. That is the word. That's it, right now. There's nothing else. So metaneo, change, turn, right? Change your ways and your thinking.
He hasn't died yet, and he hasn't risen, so what's
the
the message?
The kingdom of God is near. The question here is what? Who's in the kingdom? right? That's the question. Who's in the kingdom? And what are you going to do about it? Remember the Gerasene guy? His question is, are you going to beat my feet too? Right? I mean, Jarvis has already done it. He's already been on his knees, on his face, kissing the dirty feet of Jesus, right? And the woman was on her knees kissing the dirty feet of Jesus. Yeah.
Just an observation, both these people kind of, after they did what they did, kind of had a moment of doubt, like, okay, is something bad going to happen to me now that I did this?
Are you going to torture me too? Right? Because that's the question, right? Isn't that the, well, no, that's not the question of Monterey. The question of Monterey is, if I take Jesus' gift, I'm saved, right? But the real view is, if I take Jesus' gift, what punishment is going to be levied on me, right? Because in metaneo, you're changing. And if you change, most people don't like to change. I'm a chi of 110, which is one of the highest levels of chi, which is I love change. But it's still, you know, I'm happy with, everybody's happy with some degree of conformity, right, in the world, right? But no one likes to change, really, right? You know, especially you have to change your bad habits and your naughty habits and whatever things that you might like to do, right? Nobody wants to change that. Nobody wants to be told that they're wrong, right? So the question is, are you going to beat me? Are you going to beat my feet? Are you going to torture me? Anyway, it's beautiful.
What do they really have to lose, all three of these people? I mean, what risk are they taking? The guy in the tombs, I mean, what else could happen to him? The woman, he's about to lose his daughter?
The Gerasene is probably going to be recaptured by the Roman legion, because it is obvious that he's a Roman legion. He's a deserter. He's obviously a deserter. He's Greek, or he's of a Greek persuasion, so he's probably half Roman legion, half Roman, because he couldn't be a legionnaire. But anyway, it's obvious that the legion's looking for him, right? That's why he was bound in the first place. So by going to the Greek thing and talking about this, he's toast. The woman was not killed, but we don't know what happened to her afterwards, because she walked unclean into this thing. And do you think she got cleaned up since then? Well, she was healed, but she wasn't cleaned up, right? So she's unclean, right? So we don't know. The answer, the answer is not there. Jesus didn't, right? Okay, the other question is, what's going to happen to Jarvis? Jairus, this guy. He put his lips on the feet of an itinerant diaskolos, not a rabbi, right? And he is the arch synagogue. He's the head of synagogues. He's toast. He's probably going to lose his standing with the Pharisees. But notice what he is. This is beautiful stuff. He did not let anyone follow Sunnikaleo except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. So why did he say, I don't know, maybe they needed more persuasion. Maybe Jesus needed muscle. Remember, these are the muscle guys, right? So I think maybe Jesus needed muscle, but maybe they needed more persuasion than others. I would guess that too. When he came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion. The people were crying and wailing loudly. Did the Jews do this? No, this is Greeks. This is purely Greek. The Greeks did this. So this synagogue ruler is Hellenized. He's not Greek. He's Hellenized. He's Hellenized. Very Hellenized. Matter of fact, you notice that Matthew used technical terms in describing the wailing, while Mark simply describes them. The reason is the audience. They're Greeks, so they know. They don't have to be told the technical term, right, of the type of wailing, because they know when they say they're wailing, that it's got to be Greek wailing, right? That's what they're assuming. He went in to say to them, why all this commotion and wailing? The child, the pedeon, the little child, this is a kid below 12, is not dead, has not died off, but kathedo, they sleeping. The child's sleeping. Notice, not cursed, not ill, not dead, sleeping. They laughed at him. He put them all out. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went into where the child was. What did they do already? The child is dead, therefore the child is Unclean. The child has no value at all. It's a dead kid. It's a dead little girl. You know, she had no value before. She has no value now. She has no value at all now. He took her by the hand. He just said what? In Hebrew. Now, it's okay because Jesus was already touched by an unclean person. Notice that? So he's already unclean. He legoed to her. Talitha kum. Little girl, I say to get up. By the way, Talitha kum is Aramaic. And if you want proof text of the fact that Jesus spoke Greek, why would you quote Aramaic if he's speaking, you know, Aramaic all the time? There's no way. If he's speaking Aramaic all the time, you quote what he said Greek. So anyway, said to her, get up. Immediately, the girl, Astemi, stood and walked around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astounded. She was 12, but she was called a little child and a little daughter. Very interesting here. He gave strict orders, literally diastelomai, set apart, not to let anybody know this, and told them to give her something to eat. Why? Why not tell anybody about it, and why give her something to eat? That's what we'll conclude with.
Yeah,
Prove that she was not a ghost.
Physical thing.
Exactly.
That's what Jesus did after he rose too.
Bingo. The dead do not eat in Hebraic thought or in Jewish thought. The dead cannot eat. And so therefore, by giving the food to the kid, you proved that they weren't a ghost and therefore weren't undead, which would be really bad. The other reason why they kept it quiet was because the father was head of the synagogue. And therefore, again, the answer to Jesus' question, the unasked question. Jarvis would ask the question, are you going to torture me? And the answer is, no. You're Susan. Anyway, thank you, Father, for your word. We pray you continue to look after us this week. In your name we pray.